You do have a really nice kitchen, though.
Well,
I
thank you.
like your kitchen a lot.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to the proverbial couch. Obviously, this recording is done in the pandemic situation, so we are on separate couches. I'm joined here today by Storie. Her and I actually met through a mutual friend at a mutual gym here in Toronto. She's based out on the West Coast now, but I'll let her introduce herself, and then we'll get going.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne, for having me. Yeah, so my name is Story. I'm from Toronto, but I'm currently based in Vancouver. My pronouns are she, her for any of those listening, and create so we can create that inclusive space. And to give you a little bit of background on who I am and how I ended up where I am today. So I have a fairly extensive background in social media, handling digital content for a number of different brands, but mainly in hockey. I've traveled this country 3 times talking about hockey, getting to tweet about hockey. And that gave me, such a sense of that helped me create some amazing friendships and have some great experiences and really learn a lot about this country and the people that make it amazing. From there, kind of in that journey of crisscrossing the country, I also at the same time in parallel really found sport and fitness and turned my passion for sport into a career. So now I do still do digital content. I still do get to travel, but I'm also now the founder of Conquer Fitness. We are a company that's we just launched in January, so it is a slow build right now, focusing mainly on group classes and personal training. With the idea is that in about a year we'll be able to launch some more programs that are kind of programs for everybody of every interest with an accountability level as well. Because I mean, how many times would you go to the gym and and get a program but never actually complete it? So the idea of Conquer Fitness is that yes, there are programs for anybody at every level. For anything that you want to learn how to do, if that's a triathlon or doing a push-up for the first time or running a marathon, there'll be a program for you designed by coaches with different specialties, but also with people, real live people who actually care about you and your success. So we're going to hold your hand and push you to that next level so we can reach new heights together. So that's kind of been my life. Fitness and sports have been my life for the last probably 5-6 years. I'm also a member of Team Canada's age group duathlon team. I've been waiting for my day to compete at the World Championship for over a year now. I was supposed to compete last year, but obviously with everything being canceled, we're not so much there. But yeah, I'm still training. I race sprint duathlon, which is run, bike, run, 2.5K run or 5K run, 20K bike, 2.5K run afterwards, as fast as you possibly can. So that's, I'm training for that. I have clients across the country. And yeah, and I met last year, I think actually having to run a course outside.
Yep.
That was a very confusing course where I think I had the directions written on my arm and still managed to mess it up.
Yeah, you had directions written on your arm, maybe on a receipt. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah.
Wendy,
It was a
Wendy and
receipt.
I lost you up the hill because, admittedly, I'm not really a runner. I enjoy running. It's certainly not my strong suit though. It was also 30 degrees or 30 something degrees at night.
Yeah, that day was hot. It was a hot day.
It was hot. Wendy and I also got lost at one point, and we had to stop along the route and look at it. Like we had to pull it up on the phone and look at it. We're like, okay, do we turn here or was it the next one? Not sure. but
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
got through, and it was a good time.
And
Um,
it wasn't just, and I think it's important to note, it wasn't like run around in a circle. It
yeah,
was very complicated. I think it was about a 5K run. It was a 4.5K run. Like it was pretty decent.
yeah.
Or maybe less.
It was
But either
four.
way,
It
it
was
was
like 4.2, I think, for the big loop, if you will, which was
right.
not really a. It wasn't really like a loop. Like technically, you started and ended there, but there was a
It
lot
was not a
of
loop.
jagged.
It was not a loop. It was a very
Not a loop.
confusing route.
And then if I remember correctly, there was a death pit in the bottom that you did 2 rounds of a bunch of things over a 50-meter channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
it was like
then you ran the smaller loop to finish off.
That was so simple. I got that one.
Yeah, the smaller loop was fine. It was kind of like, cool, go up this hill, go around here, and then you end up coming back down the other side of the hill. Like, that was fine. The bigger initial loop, half of us got lost, myself included. By the time we made it to the death pit, it's like, oh, you didn't get lost. I'm like, oh, sir, I did get lost.
You know what? I think it's, when you look at courses that you look at courses that are designed, in races, I think that there's, for me having raced duathlon or done, long distance cycling tours that are organized, my athletic experience in racing or in anything competitive or anything organized, there's always route markers. Yeah. I've never had to think about or remember directions on a course. And I've ridden my bike from Toronto to Montreal twice. Yeah. But that was all, those routes are marked. I've ridden across, the Gardner for the Ride for Heart, same thing. It's a very simple route, and I think so in my like duathlon cycling, competitive mind, I can't run and remember directions at the same time. I need to, it's funny because, I remember there was this one course that I did, this one race, actually, I think possibly the last race I've done in 2019. And there was this one girl who was always a little bit faster than me, which I kind of love because my goal is to be faster than her one day. Yeah. But she was out in front of me on one of the run courses, and I can't remember if it was the start or finish, but I just see her almost try to make the wrong turn. And I just yelled out, "Jessie, no, the other way." And then she made the right turn. And I was like, that was kind of one of those really great moments where like, it was the only time I think I was happy that I was behind her, because I probably would have done the same thing, but I could see it. And I was like, oh no, wait, no, we don't do that. But yeah, I think you can't take like, I don't know, like duathletes and triathletes are so, and marathoners and stuff like that. Like when you're out on a course, you are so used to that, that like organized, course direction that says turn here, there, turn here, loop back around. Even the first ever duathlon I did, it was on the Toronto Island, and you had to do multiple loops because the island is so small. You had to do multiple loops. So I think it was like 1K loops almost. And I did one of my loops, and I thought I still had one to go, but there was a marker that came up. So every time you crossed a certain line, it would tell you how many more to do. Right. And like, thank goodness that was there, because like that made a difference of me coming in second, right, versus like, I would have been at the very bottom. And then and that was the first one where I realized, like, oh, maybe duathlon is a thing I could do, and then progressed from there. So like, yeah, route markers. Basically, route markers are the reason why I get to compete at the high level that I do. I mean, route markers are great. I used to run on a trail series. So I had injured my back because I used to run in half marathons before that, even though I don't like running very much. And the best course that I ever did was with Nike down in San Francisco. It's very hilly, that course. Incredibly hilly. I PB'd on that course. I don't know how, because there were so many hills. If you've ever been to San Francisco before, the course started just outside Union Square, and then went straight uphill after that. Amazing. My favorite. For like almost a mile uphill. And I'm just like, wow, this is how we're starting. But at least there was markers. It was really clear where you went. And then when I transitioned to trail running, because it was easier on my back, again, most of the time there would at least be flags, because you're in the forest on a mountain somewhere, and it's very easy to get
disoriented. It's really easy to get lost. And so at least there would be flags for you to follow. But moral of the story, really, markers on trails is an excellent thing. Duathlon is also a really interesting sport. It's not a sport that I know a ton about, but certainly it's certainly interesting. And I want to get your kind of thoughts on sort of opportunities versus realities for training and racing in a sport like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot to break down and unpack. No, but they're conversations that need to be had. So duathlon is kind of a sister sport of triathlon. Usually you see like triathlon is the big one, and that leads into Ironman's similar format, just longer distance. Yeah. But then you also have other events that have kind of become offshoots, and those are aqua bike and a swim run. Right. So there's become, in the last few years, there's become all these new options for people who may not necessarily either be able to do a certain part of the triathlon, or maybe they're not interested, or maybe they just don't want to. And so it kind of creates more opportunities for people to compete and enjoy the sport and get out there and then try something new. There's also, tries, which are, basically half a triathlon, half again, or a third of it. Sprint duathlon, standard duathlon, there's long distance duathlons, so there's all of these configurations of swimming, running, and biking that have, come out of the last few years of feedback being given to governing organizations. All that being said, triathlon and duathlon are kind of those top two in Canada that are happening. That being said, so which is great. However, the reality of duathlon and the accessibility to duathlons really depends on, what province you live in.
Right.
So with Triathlon Canada's office is actually just in Victoria. So I feel like they're my neighbors.
Right.
But and there are a ton of members. And so basically events and each province is provincially regulated. So you have Triathlon BC, Triathlon Ontario, etc. And then based on the number of people in those provincial organizations, there are qualification opportunities for the age group team.
Right.
So that's still an amateur team, but essentially, if you participate in a specific race, a sanctioned race, and you win your age group, you win a spot on the age group team for that sport, and then you can go off and compete in the World Championship.
Right.
So that's how I got to the World Championship team, and I hope to compete and take that further.
Right.
The downside of all of this, and as much as, I'm really grateful for the fact that I get to train out in Vancouver and the weather is mild year round and I can bike all the time and there's tons of cyclists and runners and you have lots of mountains that you can climb and all those fun things. What I'm discovering is that there are very few opportunities to race duathlon.
Right.
When you look at Triathlon Canada being based in Victoria, it's really that kind of, that's a dissociation, right? It's like, how is my governing body, the National Performance Center, all of the top triathletes are going to be, are going to Victoria, are looking for training and support in Victoria, but I can't compete. I actually can't, there is no race that I can qualify for sprint duathlon in BC.
Right.
So I have to go race somewhere else. And really the closest place for me to do that is Ontario. So that means I have to fly with my bike. I have to go to Ontario and race.
Yeah.
Which like, I don't know that it bothers me a little bit. Right. And it bothers me that a race that takes, that a style of race that takes, that is really accessible for a lot more people than triathlon. Honestly, like I've done a triathlon. I would totally do it again, except that I sink in the water.
Yeah, I'm not very strong in the swimming part.
Yeah, I am. I did one. I did it. I would do it again, 100%. And I guaranteed at some point in my life,
Yeah.
I will do an Ironman. I
Yeah.
know I will. I'm that person.
I
know
mean, if you want Ironman training peeps in Vancouver, I know a whole bunch of them.
Awesome. Yes. Not yet. I'm not there yet. Give me like 10 years. I think it's going to be like for my 50th birthday. I'm going to do an Ironman. I think
like to segue for like a tiny second. This girl that I used to play rugby with, and her and I worked at Parkland and Chevron together. She did a half Ironman because she was doing ankle rehab from hurting it playing rugby. And then while she was doing ankle rehab, so part of it was pool therapy, she was just like, we're going to try this out. So she skipped triathlons altogether and went straight to the half Ironman.
Good for her.
Loved it so much.
Go big or go home, really.
Yeah, and she loved it so much that she decided to do the full one the year after.
Good for her. And Ironman training is such a different beast. Each of them are such different beasts, and duathlon takes a very specific style of training. Yeah. Triathlon takes another style of training, and they aren't the same sport. They are different and special. And so going back to that, all of with Triathlon Canada, they, in preparation for the World Championships, their communication is always, and this isn't just Triathlon Canada, it's Triathlon BC, it's Triathlon Ontario. When the name triathlon is in your company, is your company name,
right?
Yes, your priority is those triathletes. Those are that's your membership. Those are the core people who are paying you money, but also there's never communication around duathlon or getting into the sport, or how do we create more opportunities to introduce duathlon. In Europe, for example, duathlon is massive. It's actually one of the more popular sports. Yes, you have triathlon and you have Ironmans, but sure. Powerman duathlon is a long distance duathlon that's insanely popular. I see people competing in duathlons all across South America, in Spain right now, makes me a little bit jealous that there are people who are competing right now and I'm not. But right. even in Great Britain, they acknowledge their duathletes. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect where, we're, as duathletes, we're given these opportunities, but they're, in terms of being able to race for our country. And as an age grouper, you absorb all of those costs yourself. Like, you're paying for your training, you pay for your kit, you pay for transportation, you pay for your hotel, everything.
It is the pay to play model. I'm very, very familiar with that model.
But as someone who's never been a top level athlete, this is a huge opportunity. And I understand that, even the top triathletes had to do it at some point. So, there's a process.
Yeah.
But it sort of just doesn't seem like there's a means to an end, I guess, right? As a duathlete in Canada, unless, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, the World Games, which is a little bit of a sister competition to the Olympics. World Games 2022 has just introduced duathlon. So that's like the biggest win for our community. And it's so exciting. And I'm like, okay, I just have to win the World Championship this year, and then I'll totally get an invite, right? That's how it works. Is that how I do it? I just have to race in under an hour, and I'll totally.
And I mean,
I'll change the face of duathlon. So anyway, I mean, all of this is rambling, but really all of it is to say that, I think that there are a lot of discrepancies. I think that there are a lot of athletes who get forgotten when it comes to duathlon, and that's disappointing, because duathletes are and triathletes, but the duathlon community is so incredible and supportive, and you see the same people at the same races, and you get to know them, especially at least in Ontario. When I was racing, you do 3 or 4 races in a year. It's the same people, and you become a family, and you support each other, and they give you big hugs at the end, when you cross that finish line, and you have people that you can look up to. And without duathlon, I don't think I would be coaching, and I wouldn't have Conquer Fitness, and I wouldn't have the friends that I have, and I wouldn't have our One Academy family. And it's like there's and duathlon is such an opportunity to explore sport, multi-sport, without the barrier of swimming, which is a pretty big barrier. So I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know where we go from here, but all I can say is more people need to sign up for duathlons and start getting into duathlons, and then maybe we can change the world.
I mean, admittedly, I only really knew what duathlon was because I had seen it outside of Canada. Seen it in Europe, basically not here. Triathlon is a sport that everyone is familiar with, whether you've seen it at an elite level or whether you've just participated in, for example, like the UBC. UBC does a sprint triathlon every year. So whether it's, through your university that they run like a very small sort of community-based, sprint race. Here in Ontario, when I was living out here before, a couple of my friends had done smaller sprint triathlons because they were just like, hey, like I kind of want to get into it. I'm a decent runner, decent cyclist, can work on the swimming part because at least the sprint distance is shorter. It's not as intimidating. But duathlon's not something that, admittedly, like I have heard very much of or know very much about, because it's, as you said, it's just not advertised in the same way. It doesn't have the same sort of weight and banner that triathlon does, which I think is really unfortunate because, like you mentioned, within sport, sometimes there are components of it that are barriers to entry. And for triathlon, a lot of times, it might be, hey, I can't swim, but I'm a decent runner and a decent cyclist. Is there something else that I can do that isn't just running and isn't just cycling? Right?
Yeah.
And so
Exactly.
This would be a really great medium to say, I want to try something that's multi-sport. I'm decently okay at these two things, and maybe I'll have fun doing them, but it takes some of that stress away from being like, I can't swim very well.
And honestly, like, I mean, for someone who can't swim very well, the swimming part is, most people have a bike. Yep. Anybody can run, right? So, and you don't need, and I need to stress, you don't need a fancy bike to do a triathlon or a duathlon, or right, to do a road, like a road event.
Yeah.
You need just a bike that works. I've been to events where people pull out their like old school mountain bike, and that's what they ride. And I think that's so awesome.
Yeah.
And I make sure to go out of my mind and be like, you're awesome, give them a high five, because they signed up for something. It can be really intimidating walking into transition, setting up your bike, and seeing all these like
yep,
$4,000, $5,000, $10,000 tri bikes.
Yep.
That can be a lot. And everyone in their gear and their helmets, and everyone looks so sleek. And you're just like,
oh, I've definitely,
newbie here. What's up, guys? What's going on? That can be intimidating.
Once over, and it's like a little bit of judgment. It's just like, yo, this is not my primary sport. I'm literally just, I want to try it, because the barrier to entry, at least to do it for the pure enjoyment of doing it, is so much lower than some of the other sports out there.
Absolutely. And, and I mean, I think I think honestly, a lot of the anxiety, or like that once over, trying to like look as sleek as somebody else, really melts away as soon as the person in transition beside you says hello.
Yeah.
Because the triathlon and the duathlon community is so friendly. They are so supportive. And truly and honestly, I've reached out to duathletes who are pros, and they've always gotten back to me immediately. We all end up following each other on Zwift, and then we try to ride together. And
Right.
some of them I've never even met, and they're like, "Oh no, let's like meet up for a ride." And you're like, "Okay, you're gonna kick my butt. Cool, great, yeah, I'll try to keep up with you." Um, so like, yeah. So I mean, duathlon is such this like cool thing, and the same thing with like aqua bike. Maybe you can't run for some reason, but you can bike and you can swim.
Yeah.
But for me, like kind of, I was going to do a triathlon. This is how I got into it. I was going to do a triathlon, but I had done some swim training in a pool.
Okay.
I probably wasn't really ready, and I knew I had to rent a wetsuit, but I didn't do that in advance, assuming that I would be able to do that on site, which I could. So I did know that.
Okay.
So I was going to go rent this wetsuit, but then the swim part of the course got canceled, and everyone just got switched into duathlon.
Right.
They said, like, or you can not race if you want, or you can just do the duathlon. I was like, great, awesome. So good, because I didn't want to swim anyway. I did the duathlon. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And then that I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do a triathlon. The amount of actual, for someone who didn't grow up swimming,
Yeah.
the amount of training you need to do to get comfortable in open water is a lot.
Yeah.
And not saying it's not doable, but when you're trying to focus on running faster and biking faster, adding a swim training to your schedule can be a lot, especially, with the rest of life things that go on. Also, you need to get a wetsuit, and you need to coordinate getting a wetsuit. And then you need to understand how to put that wetsuit on and how to get it off really fast. And then there's a lot of, and then also that water can be really cold. If you're swimming in Lake Ontario, it can still be really cold in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
And like, what does it feel like to have your heart almost explode? And, and.
Yeah.
It's triathlon can be a lot. It can be really, what I'm saying is basically triathlon can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like opportunities like duathlon are such a great way to get people out having a good time. It's the same course.
Right.
You run the same course as everyone on the triathlon. Just so at the start, you just do an extra run. So you run around the course twice, you go jump on your bike, you're doing the same ride as everyone in triathlon, and then you run around doing the same course as everyone in triathlon. They're really, or maybe cutting it in half or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it really, duathlon really, and aqua bike and swim runs make multi-sport accessible for so many more people, which is really what the end goal is, right? Doesn't matter if you're triathlete, duathlete, Ironman, aqua bike, swim run, whatever you're doing. But I think it's so important, like, give people the opportunities to go out there and be active and do something fun, and then they'll keep doing it. If I had done a triathlon the first time, I think my heart would have, I would have had that heart exploding feeling.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have stayed in multi-sport, which has been the basis of a lot of things that I've done since. And so, I think like creating more accessible opportunities is really what we need to be focusing on, so that we create fun, amazing, positive experiences for people that just keep them active.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, I come from a very, very different athletic background. So I have competed in both individual and team sport. I've competed at an elite level in team sport, provincial level in individual sport, and then I also do a strength sport on top of that. Each one of these things, while there's not quite as much initial barrier to entry, there certainly becomes a lot more of a barrier to entry the further up you go. Rugby, for example, it was only really in the recent maybe 3-4 years that the women's team, the national team, has not had to pay to represent their country. That is a very, very recent thing. That hasn't always been the case. So even if you're nationally carded, that doesn't always guarantee that you're not paying a huge sum of money. One of my former teammates, when she went to the 2015 World Cup, she had, when she retired, she had kind of estimated over the course of her rugby career, had probably sunken in more than $30,000 to represent Canada at that point in time, which is a lot of money. Weightlifting, again, relative low barrier to entry at the beginning. It certainly gets a lot higher if you ever reach the elite level, because unless you're sponsored, it is expensive to go and compete internationally where you need to. If you're trying to secure a spot on the national team, if you're trying to secure a spot in the Olympic trials. I was watching, I think it was the 2021 Asia World Championships for weightlifting last weekend. And the elite level lifters are amazing. And there are some of them that literally broke world records and will still not be able to go to Tokyo because the team overall is just that good. Like, it's absurd. But again, it's one of those where it's like, do you have the drive, the sacrifice, and the financial means to keep going in a sport where you just may not be able to? But it's not to say that everyone that participates in sport needs to be at an elite level. I have always been a firm believer of being able to incorporate movement, doing sport for fun. Because if you find an activity that is enjoyable, that you love, you're going to continue to do it. And there's so many other, benefits to your life. And I think you talked about a lot of them. It's the lasting friendships that you make. It's the camaraderie that you feel when you're on course. Hugs, what are those? I don't.
Yeah. Do you remember what a hug is?
I mean, I've hugged Wendy, but I mean, she's in my bubble and she lives in my building. So, that's a little different, but it's been a really long time since it's kind of like, been able to be around teammates in the same physical location, doing the same things, and then just like giving each other actual high fives, being like, yes, like this was good, and so there's so many benefits to sport in general. Not, if you take the competing part of it aside, there's so many benefits. The other thing that I kind of wanted to know sort of your thoughts are is, do you think that it's become inclusive enough of a space?
That's
and if not, how can we as individuals and then as a broader community help to make those more inclusive?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm coming at this from honestly, from a space of privilege where like I have my barriers to entry and my needs for an inclusive space are pretty low, right? I show up. I'm a cisgendered female. Like I'm white. It's easy for me, honestly. Like it. But there was one of the companies that I work with, Inclusion Incorporated. We do a semi-regular series called Bridges of Belonging, where we invite various, sports personalities or people involved in diversity and inclusion work to come and talk about belonging and issues around that. And a few weeks ago, we had Harrison Brown, who was the first transgender professional hockey player, and Chris Mosier, who was the first transgender pro triathlete on the show. And it was to listen to their experiences. Harrison and I have been friends for a long time. So it was great to just listen to his story again, because I hadn't heard it for a few years. But Chris, I had never spoken to or met before or listened to. And he made some really, he was the trailblazer. He came out in 2010 and he started to change, he's based in the US, and he started to change rules around triathlete and competing in triathlon. And so I think that's I think triathlon has and duathlon and athletics have the opportunity to be inclusive. I think, we're seeing a lot more opportunities in at least local races
Yeah.
to where there's not just the men's race, not just the female race, but maybe like a non-binary option or whatever. And so you can choose based on your gender and
Right.
your authentic gender what race you want to compete in.
Yeah.
And so because some people might not, there are different, not boxes, but there are different spaces where they want to exist in. And triathlon is largely, compared to hockey or rugby, triathlon is and duathlon is an individual sport.
Yeah.
So really at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about being in a locker room with a bunch of other people, right? You don't have to worry about being on a team with a bunch of other people. You're just racing with yourself.
Yeah.
And yes, you might be on like a triathlon team or a running team or something like that. But at the end of the day, when you go to that start line, it's just you. It's nobody else. So, I think for me, I think triathlon has and duathlon are making some steps. Are they making all the steps? I don't know. Also, given the fact that we haven't had an official race in Canada for the last 2 years or a year and a half, and given that there's been a lot more discussion around it, I don't know where the provincial or the national organization actually sits in terms of how they're creating inclusive spaces. What I do know is that, like, we're talking about being away from our team and away from our communities. It's programs like Zwift have done an incredible job.
Mm-hmm.
Zwift, for anyone who's like, what are you talking about? Is basically, like, I call it a cycling video game. And it's awesome. I love it. You can actually hook it up to run as well, although you need a little bit more equipment and I don't know how to do that. But all you need is a smart trainer. You hook it up to your bike and then you can ride all these courses and you can ride with your friends and you can chat back and forth and there's like KOMs, like there's King of the Mountain, Queen of the Mountain, like there's jerseys you can win, there's contests, there's prizes, like it is a full virtual world.
It's really neat. And it's really,
I love it. I love it.
The last time I've used Zwift, I don't currently have a smart trainer here in Toronto. I plan on picking one up fairly soon here. But the last time I used Zwift, I just remember like being on this course and I'm just like, well, here's who's racing in this course with us. And we're just going to be turtling here in the back because, we're not at that level, however, and this is when I was living in Vancouver, it's like, it is pouring rain outside and it's dark and I want to get some movement in and I had already worked out this morning.
And I really don't want to have to ride an hour to get to mountains. This is, the beauty things.
Yeah. So I'm going to sit on my bike inside and I'm going to ride this course that's in Australia somewhere.
And pretend that I'm in the sunshine and there's volcanoes around me and whatever else, you're riding all these courses. It's, Zwift is such a great training tool. But what they've also done, on top of the built-in community function, the built-in, meetup function, and there's hundreds of events every day you can join on top of just being able to ride on your own and ride a course you like. There's, tens of thousands of people on it every single day, every minute of every day around the world. But I think when we talk about creating inclusive spaces, Zwift is one of those companies that is actually talking the talk and walking the walk. They are, I recently, they released kind of a note, a press release, just talking about the ways that they actually are connecting with their community and making sure that their spaces are inclusive for everyone. And that's not just the LGBTQ plus community, that's BIPOC communities as well. And that they have people that they've hired to help them make sure that these spaces are inclusive, that there are opportunities for people. And I think that's really important. And I think with Zwift leading the charge, that can have a lot of really great positive influences into real life when we talk about our national and our provincial organizations. You know, when a company as big as Zwift does something obvious and takes action and real action, you know, it makes people listen a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. I think there are a lot of brands out there that are, admittedly, they're trying, you know, they're certainly trying to change course on how they approach things, how they approach, you know, the people that buy into their brand, who subscribe to their services, who, you know, even the diversity in athletes that they sponsor in their various arms of their company. And then there are certainly brands and organizations that, you know, I'll use the term like talk is cheap, you know. They'll say the things because the current climate dictates that they say something. So they don't sound out of touch, and they don't sound like they're alienating, you know, their potential consumer or user base. But they're not really doing very much in terms of actual definitive action that shows that community that you're saying you're supporting, how you're actually planning on doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, we're not all, nobody's perfect. And granted, there is so much to learn and unlearn. And especially, you know, even I look at me, like, you know, I definitely want to, I support different groups, you know, and really want to be there. But, you know, how do I show up for specific groups? And really, you know, how do I put my money where my mouth is at the end of the day? You know, I say I support BIPOC groups, but like outside of saying that, what am I doing? What can I do? How can I support? And what does that mean? You know, attending an event, like a virtual event, does that mean donating? And you know, everyone shows up differently, but it's important to show up and do your part. There's lots of brands out there, and not just, you know, and large and small, who say the things just like you say, but haven't provided any proof that they are actually doing what, you know. There's all these lines all the time. It's like, we can do better. We can do better. Okay. That's like saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But eventually you need to, you can't keep saying I'm sorry, because you actually have to change. And you need to keep saying, you know, we promise to do better. How do you promise to do better? What are your actionable items? And that is what a lot of companies are missing, and a lot of organizations are missing. You post, you know, and maybe, you know, and for individuals, it's one thing, because, you know, yes, you took a stance, and yes, you decided to be public on your social media accounts. And I'm saying this to myself too, that I'm not scrubbing my hands of this. But, you know, like, individuals may choose to say something and then support organizations silently. I don't necessarily want to announce the world every time I make a donation to an organization.
Of course.
You know, I will post something that is in support of various communities, but, you know, but if someone were to ask, what do you do to support these companies? I would say, or these organizations or these people, I would say, this is what I'm doing. And if they said, oh, well, have you considered this? I'd be like, no, that's a great idea. Awesome. Or no, that doesn't really, like, you know, and I would consider it. But with an organization, with a company, it is your responsibility to be transparent. And if you don't have the answers, that's okay. But you have to show the actionable items as to what you're doing to be better, right? If you are like, we are going to hire a diversity and inclusion expert. Great. 6 months down the line, you know, we want answers. We want to know, what did you do? Or did you just tick the boxes and say, we're going to post this on social media, we're going to, you know, we're going to hire this person, but they're actually not going to do any work, or we won't we won't give them the tools to succeed.
Right.
And that's a lot of, these are a lot of issues that are coming out where, talk is cheap and people are noticing. And that's the exciting and riling up part where we can now hold companies accountable and really hold them accountable because, social media, they said they were going to do something. And if they aren't being transparent and they aren't being open and they aren't listening, then it's finally, we have it like a group, us, the whole group of people in the world, human beings,
right,
have a chance to really, say something and show them that what we need are these kinds of answers.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, there is a fine line between performative action and accountable action, because again, like as individuals, you can make posts and things, and obviously you can choose to disclose, when you do other things, like if you're donating to causes and things like that. But you can also, you can support the creators of those communities to help amplify their voices as well. You can engage in conversation with even your immediate friends about some of these things. And, sometimes they're not super comfortable conversations, but the more that we have them, the more normalized they become. And the more people will feel comfortable about voicing what their opinions are and actually trying to drive change. Because I think, I just think back to some of the experiences that I've had when I was younger, and 20 or 21-year-old me may have known that there were things that were not quite right, but really just didn't have the courage to challenge that. If I was told no, like I can distinctly remember, I didn't get hired for a coaching position. I found out via a press release that they hired someone from New Zealand. They didn't even bother to tell me that I didn't get it. So that's the one thing that irks me a little bit. If you're not going to hire someone for whatever it is, just tell them. You can be nice about it. Like, you don't have to be
just let me know so I'm not, checking my voicemail every 5 seconds. But okay, I'm not neurotic,
Yeah, it was also just jarring to read it in a press release that I didn't get it. That they were just like, oh, we hired this. The reasoning that I got was that it optically wouldn't look good to hire me. And I'm just like, if we want to play the optics game here, you would have hired me, because then it would have looked like you tried to hire someone that wasn't white and male. As if we're speaking purely on just optics alone, it looks better for you if you hired someone that wasn't that, because then it at least looks like you're trying. This to me tells that you just didn't give a shit, pardon my language, about diversity, if that's the reasoning that you gave me. Right. And so I was quite a bit younger at that time, and so I was kind of like, I just took the no at face value, even though deep down I'm just like, this isn't really right. And whether or not I would have been a good fit for that role is neither here nor there. But I didn't have the courage to really challenge what that actually meant. You fast forward now to now in my late 30s, I'm going to challenge that. Whether it changes the outcome is neither here nor there. Most of it is, I want to be able to understand if there is a gap. I want to know what it is so that I can work on it. But also, if there is no justifiable reason in that sense, and you're literally just hiring me because, like, not hiring someone because of how they look or how they present or whatnot, that's not right either. And I think that people should challenge that and not just take the no at face value. You can still take the no as long as there is an understanding of the rationale behind that no, rather than just taking it at face value and just being like, okay, like, I guess I guess that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. We have the right to challenge and we have the right to ask. You always have the right to ask a question.
Yeah.
And that can be a question about quite literally anything. If you don't know, just ask.
Yeah.
And if you are curious, ask. And you'll find that there are communities and groups of people and amazing humans out there who will answer your questions. And so, that's kind of one of the great things about this world again, and our evolution, is that we've become a little bit more of a curious group, of a curious society.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we give more opportunities to ask questions, and when asked, we will give answers. I think it's encouraging and empowering our friends and our colleagues and our community members to ask those questions, and to yeah, it's really is just to ask and to be curious and to challenge, and have the support our friends and our colleagues when they do challenge.
Yeah.
And not just say, oh, well, why would you even think that?
Yeah.
And knock your friend off, or knock your colleague, or someone in your community, or someone that and say, that was really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did they say? How did become curious yourself about your friend's experience, because then that might allow you to reflect on maybe some of your actions, maybe some of your internal stereotypes or your internal prejudices. We all have these systemic ideas that we've grown up with, and it's really being curious is the first step to learning and unlearning all of these things that the world has taught us were okay, that really aren't okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think the more that we can ask questions without fear of judgment, because I do think that there's a way to ask the question that is genuine. There's a genuine way of asking the question where it's coming from a place of, I don't know what this is and I would like more clarity. That isn't weighted down by judgment within that question of trying to gain clarity, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I also think there's a lot of value in sharing experiences, because everyone's story is going to be a little bit different. Everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different. But there's sometimes that there are parallels between our stories, and sometimes it is very beneficial to hear someone else's experiences. I'll be speaking on a panel later on in July about perception bias. I was really grateful that the speaker series accepted my proposal, for one. And the second thing, I'll be kind of chatting about perception bias from sort of a twofold lens. One is from the lens of an athlete, how I've experienced perception bias as a competing athlete, and then whether or not that perception bias has changed, and if it has changed, how it's changed as I've made that transition from being a competing athlete to coaching at the high performance level. Not to say that these perception biases don't exist in every other facet of life, but I specifically wanted to talk about sport, especially in the sports that I am in. There is a lot of bias that happens within them. The amount of vitriol that I've personally received on social media, notwithstanding that if I was any more well known, it'd probably be even worse, because I've seen comments on elite level athletes and just kind of the vile trash that happens, but it's kind of part of the course. Unfortunately, in sports like that, where there is a strength component, it would be naive to think that, these are things that you won't hear. It's naive to think that. But what we can do, I think, is challenge what that notion is. Why is it happening? Part of it is going to be bias that's presented within our societal norms that come from very systemic things that's just been sort of ingrained and steeped within our society for so long that a lot of folks are starting to become a lot more aware of. They're starting to unlearn some of those things. And they're starting to also be curious and challenge what those notions are a lot more than maybe they ever have. So, yeah. And so, I mean, I think it's really helpful to have these conversations, even if you don't know where to start to have these conversations. It's something as easy as chatting with a friend, and it can be a super casual conversation. It can, it can be with your colleagues that you're working with. Again, it doesn't have to be a formalized conversation. It can be something very casual. But I think what it does is it brings about a little bit more awareness, and it also normalizes having that conversation in the first place. So people aren't intimidated by broaching subjects that they might think, oh, what if I can't ask this question? Again, you can always ask questions as long as they're, done from a respectful, genuine place of curiosity, um, and trying to take out some of that judgment.
Yeah.
It's an experience I've had, especially as a coach, of high performance athletes that are young. So they're still in sort of their formative years of discovering their own identities, both as an athlete and as an individual. And part of my role is to help to guide them to be better human beings as they grow into adults. And hopefully I'm able to do that by leading by example, with the own things that I'm doing, and sort of, where I'm placing my energies. And so as I've gotten older, I've definitely found a spot in this very small niche of sport, to talk about these issues. That's why I started this podcast in the first place. I wanted a medium to be able to talk about slightly more serious minded topics, but in an accessible way that isn't intimidating. And it's kind of like, maybe if you listen to this episode, maybe you'll be prompted to think about some of these things that Storie and I have chatted about. And perhaps it prompts you to know that having these conversations with your friends or your colleagues is not something to be intimidated by. Get curious, be curious about things, but be genuine about that curiosity and be respectful about that curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was, you nailed it on the head. And really it is, be genuine, be curious, ask questions. If you're coming from it from a place of love and authenticity, you will find the answers that will, really help to shape your decisions and your actions and your thoughts going forward. And I think also, adults have such a power right now, but kids, like, I'm so excited for the kids, and for the next generation. The kids who are 7, 8, 9, 10 right now
Mm-hmm.
are in such an incredible space where they're so full of opportunity to learn and to accept, and to, they're aware enough that they can understand different gender identities. They're aware enough that they have a sense of self, and they're going to grow in a space that accepts them for who they are.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And then, things take time, right? We have to understand change doesn't happen overnight, but when we, support each other and we change, like, generations upon generations are going to create a better, more equal world for everybody else. Not to be super cheesy, but
no, 100%. That's really awesome. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on this podcast, and it's been such an enlightful conversation. And I hope to have further conversations, and hopefully, when the pandemic calms down a little bit, I'll be able to fly back to the West Coast, and we can do fun, fitnessy type things. If the good people out there want to know more about you, or they want to find you, where can they do that?
well, they can go to conquerfit.ca. That's our website. They can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Team Conquer Fit. You can DM me anytime. Send me a note if you have any questions. Happy to talk. And yeah, if you want to, and literally, if you have any questions about anything, such as the theme of today, I guess, from coming at it from a genuine, authentic way, come and ask me, because I will answer your questions with love and open arms. And yeah, and hopefully, and we can see each other soon. Hopefully, maybe I can get back to Toronto, and I'll have my bike with me at that time if all goes well. So crossing my fingers, and we can go out and do some riding, some running, some riding. We should do the course again. We'll do that course again.
Yeah.
And not get lost
I mean, now that we know, I mean,
there'll be a new course to get lost on. Don't worry.
We have Strava data now because we've all.
No, but mine was I was so off that mine didn't, that I didn't actually place.
I don't know if I placed or not. I think Wendy did.
Yeah, I got
I think my Strava data was like a little bit off of hers, and so I think it recorded like 150 meters less or something. I don't know. I go running with her quite a bit, and like every once in a while, it'll just be like, we were on the same route. Like, why is mine like 100 meters less than yours? Like, we literally started at the same time and we ended at this. I don't know. Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, you can find Storie conquerfit.ca. You can also find her on Instagram. I don't remember if she left her handle here for you. Storie the Pixie, I believe.
Storie the Pixie, or Team Conquer Fit.
You can also find me on Instagram, THY_AN. Yeah, until next time.
Thank you. Great chatting.